When you come to me and ask why you continually choose the same kind of partner, I must begin by revealing a truth that many resist. You are not choosing freely. Long before you became an adult capable of romance, your unconscious was already writing the script you now follow. Every gesture of affection you crave, every emotional pattern you repeat, every disappointment that feels strangely familiar, all of it originates in the earliest bonds of your childhood. You believe you are simply falling in love, but in reality you are remembering. I have seen countless patients relive their past without any awareness of doing so. They enter relationships feeling a mysterious pull, an inexplicable attraction, as if destiny itself were guiding them. Yet this destiny is nothing more than the unconscious recreating what it knows. If your home was filled with warmth and stability, you may seek similar comforts. But if your childhood was marked by distance, neglect, or inconsistency, you may gravitate precisely toward those who can wound you in the same way. Pain that is familiar often feels safer than love that is unknown. You must understand that the unconscious is not concerned with your happiness. It is concerned with mastery. It compels you to repeat old emotional situations, especially painful ones, in the hope of achieving a different outcome this time. If as a child you longed for affection from someone who could not give it, you may now choose partners who resemble that early figure, hoping unconsciously to finally win the love you once missed. This longing is not romantic. It is a psychic mission to repair the original wound. Many of you tell me that you keep choosing the wrong person, but I insist, the person is not wrong. They are familiar. They confirm a role you have silently rehearsed for decades. When you meet someone who fits your unconscious template, whether nurturing or destructive, you feel a powerful sense of recognition. You call it chemistry. I call it repetition. Your adult relationships are not merely about attraction. They are reenactments of emotional dramas that began long before you knew what love was. You are trying to resolve unfinished psychological business. But until you uncover and understand the invisible script you inherited from your past, you will continue to act it out blindly, believing each new relationship is a fresh beginning when in truth it is the same story with a new face. Only when the unconscious becomes conscious, when you dare to examine the early memories, wounds, and desires that shaped your emotional identity, can you begin to choose differently. Otherwise, you will remain a loyal actor in a play you never realized you were performing, repeating the same lines, pursuing the same roles, and calling it fate. When you tell me that you fell in love at first sight, I must confess, I do not believe in such accidents of the heart. What you call instant attraction is, in truth, the rapid work of your unconscious, which recognizes something long before your conscious mind catches up. In that brief moment, you are not seeing a new person. You are seeing the familiar echo of figures from your past. The emotional memory stirs, and you mistake recognition for destiny. You imagine that your heart is choosing freely, but it is your trauma that makes the first move. Your unconscious is constantly scanning for traces of old wounds, the same tone of voice, the same emotional distance, the same charm mixed with unpredictability. When it finds these elements, it pushes you forward with a force that feels almost supernatural. You believe it is passion, but it is repetition. The psyche's attempt to recreate what hurt you once, hoping it will end differently this time. This powerful attraction feels intoxicating precisely because it is familiar. The body responds instantly, the accelerated heartbeat, the warmth, the sense that this person is the one, belle. But what you are truly responding to is the reactivation of an unresolved emotional pattern. It is as if your mind whispers, this is the person who will let you rewrite your past. And yet, more often than not, you end up reliving it instead. In my clinical work, I have seen that such enchantment is rarely benign. What feels magical is often the return of something ancient within you. The unconscious does not speak in words, but in impulses, sensations, and compulsions. When you feel drawn to someone with inexplicable intensity, ask yourself, which old story is being awakened here? Because I assure you, there is always a story. Love at first sight is the mask your unconscious wears to hide the familiar drama it is preparing to reenact. You are not choosing, you are being chosen by your own history. And unless you make this process conscious, you will continue to mistake emotional déjà vu for fate. So before surrendering to the thrill of that first spark, pause. Listen carefully. The attraction you feel may not be a promise, but a warning that the past has come to claim you once again. I have long observed that the impulse to save another person is rarely about the other at all. It is instead a return to an early moment of helplessness, a time when you, as a child, witnessed suffering, chaos, or emotional instability and lacked the power to intervene. When I look at patients who chronically choose partners in distress, I see individuals attempting to rewrite that formative moment. They are not simply offering help. They are striving to undo an old wound that still bleeds beneath the surface of consciousness. You may think you are drawn to someone because you possess a generous heart or because destiny has placed this person in your path. But in truth, the choice is dictated by a far older story, the memory of an emotional failure you have never forgiven yourself for. As a child, you could not save the parent who was unhappy, the caregiver who was unstable, or the environment that felt unsafe. Now, as an adult, you search compulsively for someone who embodies the same fragility, hoping that this time you will succeed where once you could not. In psychoanalysis, I call this repetition compulsion, the tendency of the mind to recreate painful situations in the hope of achieving mastery over them. When you choose partners who are broken, troubled, or dependent, you are not simply loving them. You are reenacting a drama. You play the role of the rescuer because it grants you the illusion of strength, control, and purpose that you never possessed in childhood. In this way, the past disguises itself as love. Yet I must warn you, the unconscious does not seek healing. It seeks repetition. And repetition, if not brought to awareness, becomes a trap. You may find yourself in cycle after cycle, giving more than you have, carrying emotional burdens that are not yours, and confusing exhaustion with devotion. Each failed attempt to save another person leaves you with a deeper sense of inadequacy, reinforcing the very wound you are trying to heal. You believe you are attracted to people you can fix because you are compassionate, but the truth is more complex. You choose them because they mirror your internal landscape. The fear of abandonment, the longing for validation, the desire to feel indispensable. To be needed gives you a sense of identity. It confirms that you have value. But love built on the need to be necessary is not love. It is dependency disguised as virtue. When I examine the dynamics of such relationships, I see not two adults relating, but a child and their ghost. You become the parent you wished you had, offering support, guidance, patience, and protection. Your partner becomes the wounded figure you once admired or feared, but the more you try to rescue them, the more you lose yourself in the process. The savior becomes the sacrificed, drained by an emotional duty that was never theirs to bear. Only when you recognize the origin of this compulsion can you begin to free yourself from it. Healing does not come from saving others, but from confronting the helplessness you once felt and allowing yourself to grieve it. When you stop mistaking suffering for intimacy and chaos for chemistry, you will discover that your capacity for love does not depend on fixing anyone. It depends on allowing yourself to be whole. And so, I tell you, the desire to save another is not a curse, but it is not a calling either. It is the echo of a child still trying to rewrite the past. Once you bring that echo into consciousness, you will finally understand that you were never meant to be someone's savior. You were meant to be your own. When I speak of attraction, I do not speak merely of beauty, charm, or surface appeal. I speak of the secret forces that operate beneath awareness. You believe you like someone because of their smile, their eyes, their voice, yet these elements are merely the visible symbols of a far deeper psychic mechanism. In truth, your unconscious is always choosing first, long before your conscious mind invents justifications. What you call chemistry is nothing more than the resurfacing of old desires you refuse to confront. Often, individuals assume they are guided by rational preference, a certain personality type, a familiar demeanor, a style of speaking. But these preferences are regressions, echoes of childhood impressions that shaped your earliest emotional experiences. You may swear that you just have a type, but this type was formed long before you had agency. Every small detail that draws your attention awakens a memory your unconscious has stored, but your conscious self has forgotten. I have observed time and time again that what attracts us most intensely is what resembles something from our past, something unresolved, something that still exerts its influence. You call it fate, I call it repetition. You are drawn to eyes that once reflected affection or rejection, to voices with tones you once yearned to hear or feared disappointing. These subtle sensory cues bypass your conscious reasoning entirely. They are shortcuts straight into the chambers of early desire. Many of these desires remain unspoken because they threaten the image you have constructed of yourself. You tell yourself you want stability, but you feel magnetic pull toward chaos. You insist you want kindness, yet you choose those who challenge you emotionally. Why? Because your unconscious seeks to revive the drama that shaped your emotional world. It offers you partners who awaken familiar conflicts, believing that this time, perhaps, the story will end differently. Repressed desires do not disappear simply because you deny them. They return with even greater force, disguised as attraction. The timbre of a voice, the posture of the body, the rhythm of someone's movements, these can awaken long-buried cravings. Even the slightest detail, barely perceptible to your conscious mind, can send your unconscious into recognition. This is the one who matches my forgotten longing. You imagine you are choosing freely, but you are in fact being guided by impulses you dare not examine. What we call chemistry is therefore not magic, but memory. It is the unconscious attempting to resolve unfinished desires by reenacting them with new partners. You may not understand why someone draws you in so powerfully, but your unconscious does. It searches for the figures who embody what you once wished for, what you once feared, and what you still crave without admitting it. Behind every attraction lies a confession you have not yet spoken. If you wish to gain control over your romantic patterns, you must become honest about the desires you prefer to keep hidden. Do you seek admiration, dominance, protection, validation, excitement? These desires, when denied, take the wheel of your romantic life. What remains repressed controls you far more than what you acknowledge. Until you face these impulses directly, you will continue choosing the same emotional story in different bodies. Thus, the chemistry you experience is not accidental. It is psychological déjà vu. Your unconscious recognizes what your conscious mind refuses to see. You think you are falling in love with a stranger, but in truth, you are falling into a pattern. The moment you understand this, you gain the power not only to choose differently, but to love with awareness instead of repetition. I must confess something that few people dare to confront. Being loved is, for many of you, far more frightening than loving. To love is an action. You choose, you invest, you project your desires outward. But to be loved, that is passive. It requires exposure. It demands that you allow another person to see the cracks you spend years trying to hide. When someone truly loves you, they do not fall for your performance. They fall for the trembling self behind it. And this, for the unconscious, is terrifying. In my analytic experience, I have seen countless individuals who claim to seek affection, yet unconsciously avoid precisely those who could offer it. They say they want stability, commitment, reciprocation, but they pursue the unavailable, the distant, the cold. Why? Because people who cannot love them back pose no threat. They allow you to maintain the illusion that you are open to intimacy while sparing you from the terror of being truly discovered. It is a brilliant self-deception crafted by the unconscious to protect its most fragile territories. What you call bad luck in love, I call a defensive strategy. When someone emotionally available approaches, someone who looks at you with genuine interest, the unconscious immediately perceives danger. To be seen is to be known, and to be known is to risk rejection, abandonment, or the resurfacing of old wounds. And so your psyche reacts. Discomfort grows, irritability appears, flaws are magnified. You find reasons to push the person away long before they have the chance to see who you really are. This fear is always rooted in early experiences. Somewhere in your childhood, you learned that being vulnerable leads to pain. Perhaps love was conditional, inconsistent, or overwhelming. Perhaps you relied on someone who proved unreliable. The child who learns that affection is dangerous becomes the adult who treats closeness as a threat. The unconscious, ever loyal to its earliest lessons, whispers, "Protect yourself. Do not let anyone close enough to hurt you again." Thus, you develop an attraction to those who cannot offer commitment. People who are emotionally unavailable serve a psychological purpose. They keep your heart safe. If they cannot love you, then you never have to confront the terror of letting them in. Your conscious mind complains about their distance, but your unconscious breathes a sigh of relief. It is easier to chase someone who won't stay than to accept someone who would. And consider this, when you pursue the unavailable, the power remains with you. You are the one who loves, who gives, who tries. You play the active role, never the vulnerable one. But with someone capable of loving you, the dynamic reverses. Suddenly, you are no longer in control. Their affection places you in a position of being chosen, and that can feel unbearably exposing for a psyche used to hiding. In this way, the fear of being loved is not irrational, it is protective. The unconscious is always trying to prevent the repetition of an ancient pain, yet paradoxically, the very defense designed to protect you becomes the force that isolates you. You remain safe, but also profoundly alone. You avoid the threat of heartbreak, but also the possibility of connection. If you truly wish to change this pattern, you must ask yourself not why do people abandon me, but why do I abandon anyone who sees me? Only when you dare to tolerate the discomfort of being loved, truly loved, will your relationship stop echoing the wounds of your past. It is not love that terrifies you, but what love might reveal. As I observe the patterns that govern human attachment, I often find that individuals are not guided by conscious choice, but by a compulsion deep within the psyche. This force, what I have called the repetition compulsion, drives you to reenact the same emotional story again and again, even when you believe you have chosen differently. You may tell yourself that the next relationship will be new, healthier, or wiser, but your unconscious, loyal only to unfinished wounds, leads you back to the familiar. It is not desire that pushes you toward these repeated situations. It is the ancient hope that this time the story will end differently. When you encounter a person who mirrors the emotional dynamics of your past, a part of you awakens instinctively. It recognizes the emotional landscape like the terrain of childhood, the same distance, the same yearning, the same fear of rejection or unpredictability. Even if these patterns harmed you before, your unconscious clings to them because they feel known, and what is known feels safe. You are not drawn to the person, but to the unresolved conflict they represent. You believe you are seeking love, but in truth, you are seeking mastery over a pain you could never control. In each new relationship that resembles the last, you are, in essence, attempting to rewrite your history. You hope that by choosing someone similar to the figure who wounded you, whether through neglect, absence, or conditional affection, you might finally create the outcome you once needed. You hope to be recognized, chosen, held, or validated in the ways you were not before. But this attempt is doomed because the partner you select is chosen precisely because they embody the same lack you are trying to repair. The wound cannot be healed by the person who represents it. This process creates a loop. The more you try to fix the past through the present, the deeper you fall into the same emotional abyss. When the relationship inevitably collapses in the familiar way, with disappointment, abandonment, or emotional turmoil, you may blame yourself, believing you are unworthy or unlucky. But this cycle has nothing to do with worth. It is the psyche replaying an old trauma, like a record stuck in one groove, not out of malice, but out of an unconscious attempt to solve what once felt impossible to bear. What you must understand is that your unconscious does not distinguish between past and present. It continues to behave as though you are still the child confronted with an overwhelming emotional reality. Each partner becomes a symbolic figure, a parent who never fully understood you, a caretaker who failed to protect you, or a love figure who remained out of reach. You are not loving the person before you. You are loving the memory they evoke, the story they allow you to repeat, even as it hurts you. Breaking this cycle requires a moment of recognition, a willingness to see that the emotional pull you feel is not destiny but déjà vu. When you begin to differentiate between affection and familiarity, between desire and repetition, the unconscious loses its grip. You no longer choose relationships to conquer the past, but to build a future. Only then can you step out of the fatal loop and allow yourself to love and be loved in a new way. When you believe you are simply getting to know someone, I must tell you, a deeper transaction is already unfolding. Long before the first conversation, your unconscious is scanning the other for familiar emotional signatures, patterns that resemble unresolved conflicts, unmet needs, or forbidden desires. You do not choose randomly, you choose symbolically. Each partner becomes a living representation of a page torn from your early emotional history. From my perspective, every romantic connection begins with what I call an unconscious contract. It is not negotiated consciously, nor is it spoken aloud, yet both individuals enter it fully. You select someone who agrees, without knowing, to reenact certain dynamics that your psyche is determined to revisit. Sometimes, this contract demands that the other play the nurturing figure you missed. Other times, it asks them to embody the frustrating, distant, or demanding presence you never managed to overcome. You may wonder why anyone would choose a partner who triggers pain. The answer lies in psychic repetition. What is painful is also familiar, and what is familiar feels controllable. Your unconscious believes that if you can endure the same wound again, but this time with a different outcome, you will finally master what once defeated you. Thus, you are drawn toward partners who mirror the emotional challenges you never resolved. This pull is not logical, it is instinctual. Likewise, your partner enters this contract with their own hidden expectations. You may unknowingly fulfill a role in their internal drama, just as they fulfill yours. This is why certain relationships feel intense from the beginning. You are activating each other's deepest psychic scripts. Attraction, then, is often the recognition of a role you are prepared to play. A role shaped long before adulthood, rooted in childhood experiences that still linger beneath the surface. Because these contracts operate outside awareness, they frequently generate confusion. You may feel both irresistibly drawn to and strangely threatened by someone. This ambivalence is the signature of an unconscious agreement. Part of you hopes for healing, while another fears the vulnerability required to achieve it. The result is a constant tension between closeness and defense, desire and withdrawal. Only when you bring these hidden dynamics to light can the contract be rewritten. Awareness does not magically dissolve the unconscious, but it gives you the chance to renegotiate the terms. Instead of repeating the same painful story, you can choose partners who support growth rather than reenact wounds. And in doing so, you finally escape the emotional destiny silently written by your past.